Thank the member and call the member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to second and thank my friend, colleague and neighbour, the member for North Sydney, for bringing forward this critical debate. Let me say from the outset, it is clear and unequivocal that murder of Armenian nationals by the Ottoman Empire between 1915 and 1923 constituted genocide. This motion brings pride to students of Australian history, the pride of knowing that our forebears saw a people suffering on the other side of the world, then joined hands that together stretched across 14,000 kilometres of sea and terrain that separated Australia and Western Armenia to help those who miraculously survived the Armenian Genocide. As the member for Bennelong, I represent an electorate with more Australians of Armenian origin than any other member of Parliament. They are almost all survivors of the Armenian Genocide. All of them lost family members. All of them lost their homes. All of them want justice. All of them are proud that Australia, the place where they were forced to make their home, but love without exception, did their bit and more to help their suffering ancestors. I have long called for this Parliament to recognise the Armenian Genocide. I am happy that today, by debating this motion, we are taking a significant step towards achieving that goal by recognising Australia's first major humanitarian relief effort, and what an effort it was. By late 1922, survivors of the Armenian Genocide who fled from Ottoman persecution were scattered across the Middle East and Europe and were heavily dependent on foreign aid. Reverend James Creswell, a congressional minister from Adelaide, also assisted the Armenian Relief Fund and was unanimously appointed by the National Secretary of this Australasian Armenian Relief Fund. Reverend Creswell assisted with the establishment of the Australasian Orphanage in Antelis, Lebanon in November 1922, which housed the surviving orphans of the Armenian Genocide. Over 17,000 orphans who had lost their mothers and fathers were housed at the Australasian Orphanage, some of whom later had the privilege and opportunity to later call Australia home. The director of the orphanage was Captain James Knudsen, an Anzac War veteran. He was assisted by Hilda King, Secretary of the Australian Christian Students Movement, and later Melbourne nurse Miss R. Gordon, who greatly assisted with relief efforts and devoted most of their energy to the advancement of the institution. The orphanage was part of a global network of over 200 orphanages which fed and housed over 130,000 orphans. I would like to also recognise the Republic of Turkey that grew from the ashes of the Ottoman Empire, is not the same nation that committed these atrocities, but a nation with which Western countries now enjoy strong diplomatic relations and healthy trade, commerce and tourism. In fact, my partner's daughter today is holidaying in Turkey. We have seen repeatedly through international history that the first step down this long road is the acknowledgement of past wrongs. This step not only helps to honour the dead, but also to ensure that the passage of time is not used to deny or distort historical truth. Joined by my colleagues today, Joe Hockey before us in this place, many political leaders around the world have rightfully called the atrocities that took place between 1915 and 1923 against the Armenian, Assyrian and Greek peoples by its correct term, a genocide. These include Pope Francis, President Ronald Reagan, Stephen Harper, Nicolas Sarkozy, Angela Merkel and many more. Today, I join them in calling for Australia to recognise Armenian, Assyrian and Greek genocide. I impatiently wait for the day that Australia recognises not only our efforts to aid refugees and orphans of the Armenian Genocide, but also joins with other 30 countries in calling for Turkey to recognise the events of 1915 as genocide.
Hear, hear.